Yes, ma'am.
In guaranteeing giving a guaranteed max price, which you said you can do it 50%.
Right.
A lot of things can change from 50% drawings to 100%. Won't that lead not you guys, but a general construction management company to kind of cut corners then once the final drawings come in? Because they've guaranteed a price and they don't want to eat that money.
If what we do is we include in that price, we include a contingency to cover the kinds of things that might be unforeseen. Now, we can't cover things like the owner thought it was going to be a 100,000 square foot building and he changed it to 150,000 square foot. But we can include in our contingency, we can include enough that we feel comfortable that we can guarantee it. And there have been some projects that have run over, but not so many. Usually we're able to return savings to the owner. It leads to more projects. The owner's happy. He got a windfall as far as he's concerned. Remember that if things work out great on a project, that low bid general contractor is going to make some money. He's going to take that saving and put it in his pocket. If we can figure out ways to save money, we can give it back to the owner. So there's a risk for us in guaranteeing a price that early on, but our people are good at it. And we do put in a contingency to cover that.
10%, 20%?
If I can add on to a little bit of that, and one of the misconceptions, excuse me for not standing up, but I don't want to disturb everybody, but at a 50 or 60% level of completion of the drawings, it's like the Pareto principle, if you've ever heard of it. 20% of the information determines 80% of the cost. The fact that the drawings may be only what represents 50% complete or 60% complete doesn't necessarily mean that the biggest components of the project aren't designed to almost 100%. Structural system, foundation systems, there's enough information that most of the cost of the major components of the job may very well be well defined, even though the details aren't defined. Some of those other issues you can assume the risk on without assuming the risk on the major system. So that may help explain it a little bit.
So, but it's then partly the quality of the drawings you receive at 60%.
Correct.
I've seen 60% drawings that are 10%, and
Exactly. It's a partnering process throughout the design, and also it's a function of the needs of the owner as well. And we may need to do it this way. We may, as Lee said, we may have deadlines that are impossible, and we've got to make sure. Or the budget may be so tight that the owner elects to say, listen, I can't even assume that the GMP is going to have a 10% contingency. It's got to be a 2% contingency. So there's a lot of factors in it, but the construction management method is extremely, or a very good way to facilitate getting a project going without 100% of the design.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, when we're talking about foundations, the construction management, do they go in prior to the foundation, do test holes just to avoid any kind of change orders, just at the beginning of the project?
Those are the kinds that right now we're doing the arena project in downtown Allentown.
Right.
Huge project in an area that is famous for sinkholes, and there was an office building there that a few years ago collapsed. So one of the responsibilities that we feel we have is to make sure that those kinds of things are covered. The architect certainly has those kinds of things in mind too, but we bring a practical approach to it and say, make sure that we've got test borings and make sure that they're at close enough intervals that we're not going to have a surprise. Sometimes you can take, you can go out on a site and take 8 test borings and say, gee, there's no rock here. It might turn out that there's tons of rock, or it might turn out that there's a huge sinkhole that just got missed. So we have a practical approach to those kinds of things. that we bring to the table during the design stage. And say, before you finish those drawings of just the foundation design, make sure that you do this and you do it at this kind of interval.
May I give a specific example? In fact, I don't want to sit here and have my back to you, so that brought to mind a project a few years ago we did at Parkland High School, and it was an enormous project. And one of the things was, how do we minimize the owner's risk? And one of the advantages that I think a good CM brings on board is that, you know, we get to see a multitude of projects across a wide geographic area, and a lot of different systems that engineers bring to the table. Whereas if you're, you know, working in one particular design firm, and that's not to say that those people haven't come from different backgrounds, but we get to see a lot of different systems. So one of the things we said was, how do we minimize the owner's risk on a project that has to move very, very quickly? And we said, gee, how do we do the rock on that project, for instance, in an unclassified manner, where we're just going to get a price to do all of it and not have any risk?
You should explain more about the classified.
Yeah, thank you, Lee. I'm sorry. In a classified fashion, the owner pays for rock at a unit cost. It could be $1,000 or it could be $100,000. We basically assign that risk to the owner and say, listen, it's rock. God put it there. When the earth was made, we don't know what's there, so we're not going to, you know, you're going to pay for that. In the unclassified manner, we're going to do an educated guess in terms of what is there and what it costs. And we're going to try to get a price from somebody to take it all out, but do it in an engineering fashion where we can get enough information. And it's a very large job. So how do we do that? Well, based on past projects, we said we can do test borings, we can use some geophysical methods, and we can also use some other methods. And we actually got the right consultants, applied 3 different methods and traversed the site with physical test borings, with cone penetrometer tests, where you just press down with a hydraulic ram to rock, and also did geophysical prospecting so that you could topographically look at the rock with those methods. And we you know, assembled a team, and we looked at that, and we did it, and we had a profile in 3 dimensions, computer profile generated, and we were able to attract large enough contractors that came in there that said, that's not a problem, we'll take that chance, we'll put a number on it. We got 3 prices, and there was never an extra penny paid for the rock, and it was part of the project. So even very early on, there's ways to minimize risk. We're going to talk about that later in the process, and that's not always the best method. It depends on the size of the project, it depends on a lot of factors.
Do you have any advice for newer small business construction companies?
Yeah, I got a lot of advice. It's surprising how often I'm asked that question. And I think one of the answers that I give that I think people are often surprised at is, make sure that you have an arrangement when you're doing a project that you know that you're going to get paid. I know any number, down through the years, you know, as you can tell, I've been involved in this business for a long time. And I've seen a lot of construction companies come and go. And a lot of times the reason that they go is because they did a fine job, but for one reason or another, they didn't get paid. And when you're small and you don't get paid on we've had big jobs that we didn't get paid. But we were fortunate enough by the time that happened that we were big enough that we could absorb it. But when you're small and you get hit with someone who doesn't pay, you're really, it could wipe you out before you ever really get started. And of course the other thing that you could say to any business is, your reputation means everything. Be willing to spend extra money to protect that reputation. That was one thing that my dad, there's a lot of things that my dad taught me that even though our company has gotten a lot bigger than when we were operating on his dining room table. There's a lot of things that he did and instilled in me that I think can still serve us very, very well, and that is you will run into situations where you're going to have your heart in your throat. What do I do? This is going to cost me money. It's hard for me to afford this. But in the long run, your reputation means more than money. And you have to be willing to do whatever it takes to preserve that reputation.
And when you're calculating your management fee, what kind of methods do you use to actually calculate that?
A lot of it depends on the size of the project, the complexity of the project. If it requires, if it's a long job, if it's one that entails more risk than another, it will affect the fee that we would suggest. You have to realize that when we're trying to get a contract, we talk to the owner and we tell him how good we are. And we also tell him what we think is a fair fee for a project like his. And as you might imagine, that can become a very negotiable thing. So we try to get a fee that's sufficient enough that we feel comfortable that we're going to be able to come out of it with a decent profit. In today's competitive world, it's astonishing some of the fees that are put out there. And you think that construction it's very hard to estimate exactly what things are going to cost. I mean, guys like Tom are really good at anticipating things, and we do put a contingency in, but there's a risk. I mean, things can go wrong, and when you're dealing with a fee that's very small. I'll give you an example. This is hard to believe, but a client of ours for whom we had done, it was a nursing facility. We had done a number of projects for them, and they had another project coming up, and they decided to ask some other construction managers what their fee is. So when it came time for them to decide, they said to me, well, we got some proposals, fee proposals that were, even though you've done a great job for us and all these other projects, someone else said that they could do it, that were willing to do it for a lesser fee. And I thought, you know, they were an important client. We'd done a number of jobs for them, and I said, looking back, a pretty stupid thing to say. I said, whatever we have to do, if we have to meet someone else's fee, we'll do it. And they said, fine, and they said, you're getting the job. And then a few weeks later, they said, we want to go to lunch with you, and they took me to lunch. And they said, you said you would do it for whatever else someone else would do. But we have one of the proposals is from someone who said they would do it for 0 fee. And, you know, I guess I must have had a funny look on my face when I heard that. And I said, well, does that really make any sense to you? I'm sure that I could probably find someone who would be willing to work for us as an attorney or an accountant, who might be willing to work for a year and at no fee in order to get their foot in the door, and then down through the years, you know, they'd make up for it. But I said, does that really matter? Well, I said, you know, you said that that's what you would do. And well, we sent one of our senior project managers who liked Tom in I said, could we look over the estimate that they put together where they came up with this? And they said, sure. So he went in and he looked, and he found that they had built a lot of fee into a lot of the numbers. And as it turns out, the fee that we originally quoted was very competitive, and they agreed to pay what we had originally asked for. But it's certainly not unusual for us to say we think a fair fee is 5%, and someone says, whoa, someone else will do it for 3%. those kinds of, it's a negotiable situation.
Do you still do construction, and does that conflict with being a construction manager?
That's a good question, because for many, many years, and to a smaller extent, we still do, we did our own concrete work and carpentry work. And we felt that that was an advantage to the project, because those, particularly those two issues, are the kinds of things that you can have an impact on the schedule of the job if you have control of concrete. For example, if a plumber wants to run a line into the site, but he needs a footing there before he does it because he needs to get under the footing, we can send somebody in and pour the footing, even though if we call the subcontractor, he would say, gee, I didn't figure doing one little piece, I figured doing all of it at one time. So we felt that that was an advantage, but that same question was asked a lot by people who said, well, how do we know, since you're doing your own concrete work and carpentry work and you're supervising it, how do we know that you don't have some kind of a built-in conflict here? And more, we've gotten to the point where most of those things we're subcontracting today. It bothers me because we did wonderful concrete work and wonderful carpentry work, but some owners ask that same question, and whatever they want is what we want to do.
We also do a lot of agency CM work now because of public work. We've had significant projects.
You have to explain agency CM.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Where we can't hold the contracts. We don't give a guaranteed maximum price because it's public money involved. Where and at least it was that way for many, many years, where they said, you know, those projects have to be competitively bid. And how do you get a CM involved? Well, you could have a CM involved as an agent of the owner and get GC bids, or you could break it into multiple prime trades and try to at least apply the construction management approach to the public sector by getting 15 or 20 or 25 bid packages where you competitively bid all those trades to get the best deal and the best contractors for the owner. So in that case, I mean, there's really no conflict of interest whatsoever, or it either can't be.
And we could bid on them.
And we can't bid on them.
We could bid on the concrete work
Yeah.
under that.
Interestingly, and we've been to a lot of the Construction Management Association conferences recently, a lot of public bodies are now saying, like the Washington DC School District, for instance, where they had to get a lot of buildings built quickly. They're actually using the guaranteed maximum price now and hiring a CM. They can't self-perform work, but that facilitates and enables the process to go much, much smoother. So that these delivery systems kind of evolve and change and come and go from public to private sector. So things move around.
How are we doing time-wise here?
We're good. Let's go.
Yes, ma'am.
Going back to what the advice for a contractor, what would be the good advice for a contractor a while back? Why does the contractor have to submit a bid bond for the owner to be guaranteed to get paid, where the contractor doesn't get any kind of guarantee to get paid?
Great question. Yeah, we are required on many projects to provide a performance bond which says that there is an insurance company who is willing to guarantee to an owner that we will finish the job. There is such a thing as a payment bond, where we could say to the owner, great, but we want a payment bond from you so that we know that we're going to get paid no matter what happens to you and so forth. I don't think we've ever done a job with a payment bond because the owners simply aren't willing. They just say, we insist on a performance bond, but we won't furnish a payment bond. And they're in a position to negotiate that situation, and I don't think we've ever had a project that had a payment bond. We just have to be very careful for whom we're working. We have to make sure that that we haven't gotten to, you know, we bill on a monthly basis. We have to be sure that we don't get too far into the project in terms of the money we've spent versus the money we've been paid. And there's sometimes we've sweated it out, and sometimes we've had situations where we ended up not getting paid everything. It's, you know, it's a supply and demand kind of thing.
Could you be able to stop the project if you don't get paid, like say 60 days or other
Yes.
terms?
Yeah, there are terms, and that's probably something I imagine that we'll be going over contracts. There are conditions in the contract under which we can stop if we haven't been paid. There are conditions in which if we're not performing, we can be thrown off the job. I have these funny little situations. When you've been around as long as I have, they're bound to come up. There was one of the local hospitals. We were negotiating for a project, and they wanted to put in our contract the terms that they could throw us off the job for any reason or no reason whatsoever. And I said, what in the world, why would you think that was fair to put something like that in our contract? And the guy I was negotiating with, I want to be able to throw you off the job if I don't like your tie. And so I still see him once in a while. Whenever I do, I go like this. He backed off, but you know, these are all negotiable things. The people we work for have lawyers, and they put all kinds of stuff in there to protect them to the nth degree, but protect us not at all. And you know, we're careful about whom we work for. We have to be.
Do you work a lot with the government agency or just private?
We do a lot of public work. And of course, most of that money, you don't have to worry about getting paid. So we do a lot of overtime. Yes.
Mr. Christian, most of the students in this class are seniors. What qualities, abilities, talents are you looking for in prospective employees? What do you think they should be developing? And on the other side of the coin, what do you think they should be looking for when they're looking for employers? What qualities do you think they should be looking for?
I'd say we're looking for honesty and dedication, and the feeling that the individual will easily be able to represent the kind of image we want to project to our clients. I remember when I hired Tom, I remember distinctly, he was sitting across the desk from me, and as we talked, it was clear to me he was certainly knowledgeable, had an excellent education, but he also was and still is, a modest person, a person who projects honesty and integrity, and he proved to be that down through the years. That's essentially what we're looking for. I don't care an awful lot about somebody's grades or that kind of thing. And as far as preparation, it's sort of interesting. When I was a student at Lehigh, in fact, even before I was a student at Lehigh, you might be interested in this. Things were different when I was a kid. When I was in high school, it wasn't a case of where my dad said, "What would you like to do?" He said, "You're going to Lehigh, you're going to study engineering, and you're going to come in business with me." There was no, and I said, first I checked to see if Lehigh had a baseball team, and then they did, and I said, "Okay." The guidance counselor at Allentown High School said to me, "You shouldn't be going into engineering, you should be going into journalism." because your aptitudes based on our tests are more related to journalism. I said, yeah, you go tell my father. And so I did what he wanted, and it worked out. It worked out very well for me. I think, and I can understand as I look back. I was good at math, but I was good also in writing and those kinds of things, and I think that's important. I like to see somebody who is able to discuss a lot of different subjects with we want our clients to feel not just that we're a partner of theirs from a business sense, but they're a friend. I mean, I mentioned to you that under the general contracting system, often people end up as enemies when the project is finished. We end up as having friends. Our clients become friends of ours because we've gone through projects together, and projects, they're tough, they're complicated, there's tense moments trying to get these things done on time and done as well as can be expected, and when you're finished with that, there's a sort of esprit de corps that's developed, and so I like having people who are able to project that kind of feeling with our clients. Yes, sir.
I'm Director of Internal Audit here for Lehigh University, and over the years, part of my responsibility has been to perform financial audits on building construction and so forth. And I would just like to say, in building my opinion in looking at the projects, I think your organization is very first class. You've really built a very first class organization, and all the individuals I've come in contact with are very, very professional and dedicated. So I tip my hat to you.
Thank you. And I can't tell you how much a comment like that means to me. After a while, those kinds of things become more important than money, and to be able to come to this classroom and hear him say that is worth more to me than we can possibly imagine. Thank you. More questions? Does everybody want to be a construction manager?
I wonder, is there any advice you could impart to these soon-to-be Lehigh grads, or maybe share how your Lehigh experience uniquely informed what you did in the world? Maybe, I'm assuming you hire students from all kinds of schools, good schools. Is there something unique about a Lehigh student, I wonder?
I think, of course, Lehigh always had a terrific reputation. I mean, when I started with my dad, I was the only person in the local construction industry that had an engineering degree. And having an engineering degree from Lehigh was a tremendous asset to me. Certainly, I didn't need it in order to get a job with my dad, but I think it added something to my credibility in going and talking. So having a Lehigh education is very, very beneficial. I have to say, however, that I think now it's in terms of actually being able to participate and to be productive as quickly as possible for a company like mine. I think the ability is much greater now than it was when I graduated. Like I said, we didn't have a construction management course. Boy, would that have been great for me. I took the normal civil engineering courses, and I used practically none of them. In fact, you'll hear everybody say that. I learned how to design bridges, but I haven't come close to designing a bridge. And I've learned to do a lot of other stuff that I wasn't. But of course, the discipline that it takes to get an engineering degree is very, very helpful, no matter what you want to do. I don't care whether you want to get in construction or be a doctor or whatever it is. I think that's very important. But I believe, just based on what I see here today, I believe that a Lehigh degree in engineering will produce people that were far more productive than I could have been as quickly at that time.
Yeah, I could go on and on and on, but, is construction management only for buildings? Like, do you do anything like civil works, like a dam or a solar field?
Boy, that was a perfect question. People think this was something that I hired you to give me to segue into this. Because I thought of bringing it up while I was talking. A few years ago, the people from the Bethlehem Water Authority came to us, and they said, we need to replace the Penn Forest Dam, which furnishes water for the Bethlehem water supply. And it was an earthen dam, and it was leaking, and there was a concern about it. And they said, we were wondering if you would want to replace this dam with a concrete dam. And we said, we've never built a dam. We don't know anything about building dams. It was the only time in my life that I found myself actually trying to talk somebody out of hiring us to build something. But I was concerned, gee, suppose we didn't do it right. Just think what that could mean. And we had several meetings with them, and they said, you can hire a few people who have built dams, and the process of construction management should work no matter whether it's a dam or whatever it is. And I thought, well, we got a point there. If we can find somebody like that, maybe we will do it. So we did a little checking around, and we found two retired guys from, I think it was Colorado, who had built dams out in the West, and we met with them, and we were very impressed with them. And we hired them, and we took the job, and the job went beautifully. We finished it ahead of schedule. We saved them $700,000, and so it worked perfectly. And so we had one of our senior project managers always argued down through the years. He's retired now. Argued down through the years that we shouldn't call ourselves construction managers. We should just call ourselves managers, because the process that we use works in lots and lots of different venues.
Well, that particular project was a wonderful project, and we have visited throughout its construction. The decision to go roller compacted concrete, I think Gannett Fleming was the design engineer.
That's correct.
Was that a part of the original design, or did that come out of the construction management process?
It came out of the construction management process. We looked at a number of different ways of doing it, and it wasn't our suggestion about the roller compaction, because we didn't know. Roller compacted concrete is, we had never heard of it before. You use a very, very stiff mix of concrete, has very little water in it, and you lay it out in 1 or 2 foot layers and roll over it, and you just keep doing this continuously, day after day, night after night, week after week, and just kept building this dam up. And it's much more economical than building a totally concrete dam like the Hoover Dam or something like that. But it was a result of the construction management process, but we can't take credit for suggesting it, because it wasn't our idea. In fact, it was one of the ideas suggested by the guys from Colorado. Yes, sir.
I was very sorry, I don't know if you already commented on, but building something new didn't exist versus, you do renovations, restorations, like with the new library, for example. What are pros and cons if you compare these two total different projects, styles?
Well, renovation projects are often more difficult. The library project was one of the most difficult projects that we ever did. And one of the most rewarding because the results were really remarkable. I mean, people would never realize how the giant hole we had in there. So those projects are often more difficult because you run into unforeseen conditions. But they can also be most rewarding because you're preserving something that's important to people.
Any more questions?